Okay, and we're live. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the API Chronicles, Unlocking the Future. This is a live celebration of APIs hosted by Marqeta. So I'm your moderator. My name is Gary Hoban. I'm part of the enterprise sales team here at Marqeta and will be leading today's session. We're very lucky to have Abdullah, Anu, and Yana here from JP Morgan, EY, and Mercedes Pay, respectively. I will let them do a short introduction in a moment. But firstly, today we're talking about embedded payments, and in particular, we're focusing on cars and diving into, pardon the pun, diving into who is driving this innovation. So, in-car payment systems are becoming more and more popular as increasing numbers of car manufacturers are introducing payment functionality, which is now enabling their drivers to pay for a whole host of products and services, include things like fuel and parking. We're going to get into a little bit more detail around that and really dig into what we see live in the market currently and what we see on the horizon for in-car payments. On this live stream, we'll be discussing payment system functionality that's been included in existing new cars, innovations in the automotive sector, and how this is inspiring other verticals to deliver embedded finance experiences in a wider range of contexts and industries. What we're also going to look at is everybody's favorite topic around regulation, looking at things like fraud prevention as well, and looking at how this is needed for criminals' attempts to exploit automotive payment functionality as well. Again, we want to keep this as informed as possible, really open it to the audience. We really encourage people to drop in questions and participate in this live stream. So please send through as many questions as you can via the comment section. I'll pick up on them in real time and be able to fold them into today's discussion. So without further ado, welcome Yana, Anu, and Abdullah. It'd be great if you guys could give a quick introduction. We'd love to hear a little about you, your current role, and a bit of background, your experience, and how you ended up where you are today. So let's kick off with, as you appear on my screen, I'll go with Yana first, then hand over to Abdullah, and then Anu, if you can finish up on the introductions, that would be great. And let's dive right in. Really excited about today's session, guys.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks for having me. Really excited to talk about this topic. My name is Jana Breitkopf. I am the Managing Director and CEO of Mercedes Pay USA LLC. And maybe for those that have never heard of Mercedes Pay before, we are the fintech branch and a subsidiary of Mercedes-Benz Mobility. We are operating an in-house digital payment platform and acting as the knowledge hub around digital payments for the Mercedes-Benz Group and helping them for the mobility and digitalization strategy overall. And about myself, I joined Mercedes Pay in 2019 after working for more than 6 years on the other side of a payment transaction at PayPal as a relationship manager. And since the end of 2022, I'm responsible for the North American market and actually then also relocated to the US, to Michigan, to be more precise. And in a nutshell, you can say my job is, with the support of the whole Mercedes Pay team, obviously, to help improve the driving experience of our Mercedes-Benz customers in North America by turning their car into a payment device.
Thanks, Jana. Maybe I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Abdullah Pandit. I work at JP Morgan, based in London. I'm part of what we call our mobility payment solutions team. So we are supporting auto OEMs in their digital payment use cases, some of them that was referenced by Jana. So we are also looking after a joint venture with VW as part of this proposition. And I lead our in-vehicle payments proposition, plus also all our partnership engagement across this topic. As you think about this topic, there are a number of different participants in the industry. So I sort of manage the relationships across those. I've been with JP Morgan since 2019 as well, and working on this for the last couple of years. My background is in digital payments, digital banking, and strategy around that.
I guess I'll go next. Hi, everybody. Anuvidya Lankara. I've been in payments for about 15, 16 years now. And within EY, I lead on payment strategy and technology. So pretty much embedded in embedded payments and embedded finance. So a lot of conversations that I have on a regular basis with clients around how different verticals are looking at embedded payments and automatives, obviously, is such a hot topic at the moment. So really looking forward to covering that today with the team.
Great, thank you all. It's an honor to have you all on the session, and really appreciate you all taking part in today. So really, we're going to start with the basics, and I actually think this is a straightforward question, but I do expect some differentiation in the answers across all three participants today. So I think to kick off, what I'm going to begin with is would like to get your definition of an in-car payment and what that means to you. So Jana, I think your first on my screen would be great if you could dive in and take on that question to begin. And I'd love to hear from Abdullah and Anu as well.
Yeah, happy to take over. So in-car payment, I mean, the name gives it away. We're talking about payment in the car. So in the sense of embedded finance or embedded payments, in the end, it means you bring payment into a non-financial platform. So bringing payment not just on a website or like in an app, actually bring a payment functionality into the car. And then focusing, obviously, also that this integration is working, most likely via the vehicle's infotainment system, like the screen that you have, but could be also an app as well. And then providing a convenient, and I think the secret is hands-free way to complete transactions while on the go.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know how we can go beyond that. I think maybe a couple of points to add to what. So I think one thing, I think context is important. So in the sense that when you talk about having a payment in car, how is it supporting the in-car journey the customer is going through and having a payment as part of that journey? I think whether you do that via a mobile phone, whether you do that via a card, that's just more form factor. But it's how do you support an in-car journey and support payment processing on top of that? That's sort of one thing which I would probably add.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with anything that Jana and Abdullah said. I think the way I look at in-car payments, that there's, I think, a couple of entities involved. There's a human and all the kind of biometrics and everything else, the services that reside around that human, and there's the asset that is the vehicle. So I tend to think of those two as a dichotomy, but working quite closely together. And the way we kind of distinguish the different types of in-car payments and the ecosystem that plays into it. I think we can go into the detail of this later on, but there's the infrastructure or the OEM that exists. And within that, you've got a number of service providers like fuel stations, McDonald's, for example, and Netflix. And then we've got like platforms that aggregate some of these providers as well. And then we've got the banks and financial services providers that act as the APIs, the microservices that deliver the payment. So that's the way I try to kind of think about the different actors in the whole ecosystem around in-car payments.
Great, thanks, Anu. And I think that leads nicely into the next question, where we went into just a little. We wanted to go into a little bit more detail here and understand some of the use cases you see live now across the market, and then also what you see on the horizon as well. How do you see this in-car payment method evolving over time, and where do you see it, like, as opposed to now, maybe in 5-10 years? Be great to get some insights there as well. Please feel free to just jump straight in and answer that if you've recently seen any use cases that turned your head.
I mean, I can go first. I think the most recent news that hit around in-car payments was the fact that Apple withdrew themselves from EV and all the ecosystem that they were planning on building around the Apple Car. The way I think about in-car payments is that it's like a smartphone on wheels, and everything that exists within that has to support everything that the human rider needs, and that has it's at different levels of maturity in terms of developing in the market. Then we've got about 40 markets where we've got in-car payments today. We're looking at about 500 billion in terms of transaction numbers, in terms of dollars, values in terms of dollars by 2030 for in-car payments. So it's a quite growing market across the globe. But if you look at some of the kind of big drivers and the use cases that we can see, there's the obvious ones around, you're paying for your fuel as you go, you're paying for electricity as you charge the car, and then there's, as you're riding, you've got subscriptions and other services, gaming and streaming, that you can purchase. And then there's the kind of flip side of that, where there are services that you need for the car itself. So it could be upgrading of software. It could be, like value-added services like, can I have a subscription to heat my car seats for winter, for example? So there's some really interesting use cases that are emerging in the market.
Yeah, maybe jumping in with some real life use cases that we already have integrated at Mercedes-Benz. So I think like the car becoming like your smartphone on wheels is like the really good picture. And it's like what we do, like making the life easier. So just imagine like in Germany, for example, when you drive with your Mercedes, you can say, hey, Mercedes, where's the nearest parking spot? So the car will navigate you to the nearest parking spot. And actually, if this parking spot, this on-street parking spot is part of the network that we have integrated, your head unit, the MBUX will tell you, hey, parking here will cost you €2 per hour, whatever. You want to start parking. So you say, yes, I want to start parking. You don't have to leave the car to find out, okay, where's the parking meter, or what kind of app do I have to download to be actually able to pay. You just can like park your car, you go for your business lunch, meeting your friends, whatever. And when you're finished, you come back, you start your car again. The head unit, the dashboard will ask you, hey, you want to finish parking? You say yes, and the payment is done seamlessly in the background. So even there, you don't have to fill out a card or whatever, confirming, yes, I now want to pay. And that's it. So that's the experience that we drive for Mercedes-Benz. And Fuel and Pay, for instance, in Germany would work similar. And from the US, for instance, we have the Mercedes Me store, where you can actually buy digital services also via your car already, which means if you have a car and you see a service, like for instance, maybe you want to use the dash cam feature, you have the opportunity to actually buy this in the car and not have like to log on a website or search in the app.
Yep. No, I think this covers most of it. The way I usually think about it is in sort of three buckets, right? So there's one, which is the auto OEM selling services. So that's the upgraded sat nav, the sort of some additional features related to the car. Then there's a second bucket, which is services related to sort of on the go as you're driving. So you're parking, you're charging or fueling. Tolls could be an example of that sort of category. You see that example, and sort of quick service restaurants like order ahead is sort of as you go on the move. There is a number of activity that a driver may want to do, and the use cases around that. The third bucket we see is probably, I would say, as cars are becoming moving towards EV, there's a lot more space for entertainment screens. There's a lot more space in the head unit. So you're seeing a lot of demand for video streaming and those sort of activities coming in, which is probably not related to directly being in the car or being on the move. But thinking about you're waiting 25 minutes as your charging is done, thinking about you're spending a lot more time while driving. So there's an opportunity to bring in these new experiences, which are typically not related to driving, but you're seeing more and more use cases like that being discussed and coming through.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Anybody want to add anything else there? I'll jump straight into the next question.
I think like the most important part, just like how we approach this one. I mean, yes, we have the no-brainers with fueling, parking, and so on, is actually listening to your customers. I mean, what do you want to do in your car? And it's like even maybe different from country to country. If you're living in a big city compared if you're living outside of the city, and especially looking like 5 or 10 years ahead with autonomous driving, like there will be more opportunities. So the way we see it, we are just at the beginning actually of the e-commerce era for in-car, not just payment, for in-car commerce overall.
And I'd imagine a much more robust rewards type ecosystem then as that develops over the years as well for the customer from the moment they engage Mercedes as the brand. That journey then continues as they engage and work with you over the lifetime of that partnership. That's great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to go and segue a little bit here. As this is a Marqeta live stream, we tend to have quite a few payments nerds join these sessions. I say that quite lovingly, as if you ever see a Marquetan at an event or a conference, we always tend to be wearing a payments nerd T-shirt. I actually forgot mine today, but we're very easy to recognize. So with that audience in mind, it would be great if you could give us a little bit of insight into the background tech and how this in-car payments works from a technology perspective, as opposed to let's say a smartphone. Would be great if you could give us some insight there. Please feel free to jump in, and we can take some insights from everyone here.
Maybe I'll start. So I think there's 2 or 3 different models we are seeing in the market. So essentially, all of them revolve around the driver or the customer having payment credentials stored, tokenized in a customer wallet. That's sort of the background of it. But the process of payments varies. I think the examples we are seeing in the market is twofold. The first one is where you are or either have a subscription, which is a monthly payment, or a merchant-initiated transaction in a way. So the payment isn't taken at the point of transaction, but is taken sort of at the end of a period based on the activity you've done over a period of time, could be a month. That's one example we are seeing in the market. The second example we are seeing, and that's probably the Mercedes Pay example, which is a more biometric authenticated solution. That's still probably very, I think Mercedes is probably the first ones who pioneered with that solution, where it's the fingerprint and the payment is authenticated based on certain protocols, and the payment is processed very similar to how we as customers are used to using our mobile phones to authenticate a payment. And this is obviously, from a European perspective, this is quite critical, because with PSD2, if you want a full native in-car journey without having the driver to look at their mobile phone, you need that sort of authentication capabilities, and you need then the card schemes and the issuers and the acquirers to sort of accept that authentication method. So that's some of the background tech.
Yeah, second that. So for Mercedes Benz, in the end, like the secret for the seamless payment is your Mercedes Me ID. So this is where you would store your payment method, like your favorite credit card or whatever in this market is what you need. And this can be then reused like for each and every other use case where Mercedes Me ID is also included. Because I mean, one example is the strong customer authentication in Europe, like where you would have like a media break when you need to like start your transaction like on a head unit on a screen, but then have to take out your phone to scan a QR code or wait for a PIN or do whatever. So like with a fingerprint and maybe in the future other like biometric possibilities, it's like really easy and quickly done. And then on the other hand as well, tokenization is important, like security is important, and nobody wants to enter 16 digits on a screen, even not like when we think about autonomous driving and you have the big screens in the car. I think nobody wants to do this one anyways. And then we don't store any data about your card in the car as well to make it more secure. And it's also like a big trust topic globally for the customers, that you take good care of their data and ensure that the data is like not misused and only used for this one purpose.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys said. I think the thing I would add on top is, again, the payments that you need in car, very similar to the payments types that you need on a smartphone. So when I said human plus, all the biometrics, the digital identity, all the entities that play into that ecosystem needs to be part of that car ecosystem. So, for example, in the future, when we have autonomous driving and you're pretty much kind of renting out cars that are automatically driven, you need to be able to take your profile and port it to a new car, right? So the way you need to kind of think about payments is, how do we then port that? What is that biometric that needs to be ported? How do we make that friction free? And I think we're still, quite early on in the way we look at payments, because I would, for example, like to say cross-border payments in there. If I'm traveling across countries, can I very seamlessly do a cross-border transaction? I don't think we are quite there, but I see a lot of development in that space.
Interesting. No, thank you. And looking yourselves personally, have you leveraged in-car payments yourselves? What was your experience? Be great to hear directly from the experts how you're leveraging in-car payments. I think again, I might start with you, Anu. I think I've picked on Yana and Abdullah already, so I'll give you a chance.
I was hoping you go to Yana first, because
No
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention Tesla, but I don't know if you guys have used the karaoke feature in Tesla, and I think it's only available in China, but it's a brilliant feature. But I think it's very unique to China. I'm not sure it'll pick up anywhere else in the world. But yeah, great feature. And I think they sold a load of mics of that. I think they're called Tesla mics. So yeah, I've used that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to use one of the features by myself, because like not every feature is available at the moment in each market. But I know, like for instance, in Germany, with the colleagues and friends, the fuel and pay feature is very, 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 very important for them in their life, because in the US, for instance, when you go fuel up your car, you just tap your card. I mean, that's easy enough. But like in Germany, when you fill up your car, and a lot of times you still have to go into this little store, wait at the queue before you're able to pay. And for them, obviously, it's just very convenient and obviously very, very fast to just start your fuel and pay and head unit as well. You still have to leave the car for the fuel process. I mean, this is something we can't solve. But then when you're finished, you just go back into your car. On the screen will just confirm, yes, I'm finished. You see your final payment, get the information later, and you just can drive away. So, I mean, it can't get more convenient with fueling in Germany.
Well, can I just add? So, one of the things I see into the future when you look at kind of machine-to-machine payments is that friction point where you have to get out of the car and pick up that and kind of pump fuel into your car. You can imagine a robot kind of taking that job, right? And that becomes a machine interaction throughout the process. So I think more and more you can see the interfaces changing to be more automated rather. Abdullah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Yeah, I was going to say that I actually have not used an in-car payment specifically. Funnily enough, I still rely a lot on my mobile phone to make even sort of the in-car journeys. And I would assume I'm probably reflective of a large proportion of customers still with that sort of mindset. How do you move away from sort of using your mobile phone to even fuel and pay? You can book in just going to a fuel station. I think that's where, as the evolution, we see this evolution, how you tie the payment aspect and the use case aspect with actually context. So are you able to automatically detect my fuel is going below a certain level and nudge me in that direction through the car? That sort of makes me use the car as a mechanism more. And so I think that's something which would be interesting to see how that evolves.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, especially when you start getting into things like servicing and things like that, where you've got to bring it back to a dealership. I think is very interesting.
Yeah, and I think, Abdullah, you mentioned it at the beginning. I think the important part is where does the customer journey start? Exactly. When I talk to my Mercedes and say, hey, Mercedes, and I can kind of finish also the payment on that way, I won't pick out my phone. I mean, there are even regulations where I shouldn't do this while driving anyways, but still and I think the more intuitive you do this process,
exactly,
the more people will adopt it. And the rest is obviously listening to, okay, what are not just regulations, what you have to do, but also what are the customers expecting? We know our Mercedes drivers, they're expecting a seamless and a secure payment method or payment functionality in the car. And then you just have to look, okay, what does seamless actually mean?
Absolutely.
That makes sense, and I think we're sort of nudging on to the next topic as well. I've heard Jana and Abdullah bring up regulation a few times, the most exciting point we are going to be touching on today. So interested to learn a little bit more about how safe are in-car payments. Is there an enhanced scope for fraud? And how are we mitigating this in the industry as well? That would be really interesting. Abdullah, I think you were the least picked on so far, so I might start with you, and be very interesting to get this. I think you mentioned PSD2 earlier on, so it'd be interesting to look at it through that lens as well.
Yeah.
And Dodd-Frank.
No, I think so. I think we touched upon different aspects already, right? I think we talked about digital identifiers, so tying payment credentials to an ID, and tying those payment credentials to the device. The device in this scenario being the car itself, and you having biometric authentication that follows a standard that is accepted by the industry. If you think about these 3 or 4 steps, that sort of increases or sort of drives toward the same model that we see in mobile phones at this stage for any e-commerce payment. I think that's the model which is probably, at least for now, what we think the industry is going to veer towards. I think would be interesting to get Jana's perspective to see the European and US difference. Actually, that would be something would be interesting to get, because I think there is different variations and regulations over there, and I think that would be interesting to see how that impacts this space.
Like you said, different regulations. So actually, we have like some different setups for achieving a seamless payment experience. So like in Europe, we have like PSD2, strong customer authentication. So this was one of the reasons that Mercedes Pay Plus was in the end like developed to give the customer like the opportunity for a seamless payment experience in the car. And instead of your phone, your car becomes the trusted device. In the US, we don't have these regulations for strong customer authentication, so it's a bit easier to get a seamless payment experience. But nevertheless, with like the help of our Mercedes Me ID, and you can set up pins if you want to, giving the opportunities to our customers to say, if you want to be a bit more secure, you can do it. But like we haven't like the fingerprint authentication in the US at the moment, but we are prepared. I mean, regulations, I mean, they don't come out of the nowhere. Usually you know a few years ahead what's coming up, and then everybody like panics like a few months before, like with PSD2. But nevertheless, we also believe that like regulations will help actually not just to protect the customers on one side and their data, but also like fostering trust and confidence, and also creating like products, because you have like this fixed framework, which also a lot of other entities need to be able to develop these products and to be able to say, okay, this is now an authentication, and instead of a phone, your car can become the trusted device.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the big regulations, and if I can talk about Europe first, building on PSD2, PSD3, and PSR that are coming up, I think even makes the landscape even more complex, because what it says is you need to open it up more, give new players access to schemes in Europe, and that kind of opens up the ecosystem to a level of risk. So I think that's a topic that needs to be managed really carefully. FIDA is another regulation within Europe where you need to now open up data, so that again, you need to figure out what level of data is that meant to be for an in-car payment. Again, opens you up to a new risk landscape as well. And then if I go to the Americas, Dodd-Frank, again, talks about data and how financial data, customer data needs to be more open. So I think there's great opportunity here with the regulations, because what it says is you can have new players that compete with incumbents. So therefore, new innovations, new technology that will come into play, new thinking and new ways of dealing with consumer needs. But on the flip side, we need to make sure that, and I think you spoke about what Mercedes does today, Jana. I think, how do we build that biometrics? How do we build that digital identity and have that kind of secure metrics that a human exists in?
Great, thank you. Yeah, we've got a question here from Marquetta. So not sure where this is coming from, or if it was a plant, but we looked at earlier on some of the existing use cases we're seeing for in-car payments. And next question, I wanted to look at really the future and what you see on the horizon for in-car payments. And I might tie this nicely into the question here we have from Marketa. So one of the more specific use cases highlighted here is around car insurance, and really how close we are to being able to manage and organize car insurance from the car, and if that will include a black box. So if anybody has any specifics here, and then, going on from that as well, any other use cases you see on the horizon over the next 5 to 10 years would be really interesting to hear about, or really when we start delving into sci-fi here, but it can always be quite exciting.
The insurance thing is interesting because I had a conversation earlier this afternoon just about that particular use case. So it's actually, so I think we're already seeing examples in the market because the cars being connected, you're at least seeing the distance traveled and the timestamp associated with it already being captured by a number of the car models that are out there. Now, the number of data captured, the data points that are captured is probably just going to increase as we go along, and as new models come out, you'll start seeing more than just when a customer drives or how much a customer drives. You'll start seeing how a customer drives as well. But I think the complexity from an insurance perspective comes from, in order to be able to price an insurance premium, you need to be able to consume that data and be able to have historic data so that you can tie it to actual events and be able to price it according to that. So I think we will see variations of this where we probably start with more rudimentary versions where you're just using the limited data set and pricing it on those, and you'll see examples of those coming through. Longer term, you'll probably see an evolution of that where you'll actually see a lot more sophisticated data sets as the industry standardizes and starts capturing a lot more data and historic models on the back of that. And you'll see going forward with that. But I think the question being, how soon can we see no black boxes? I think you'll start seeing them fairly soon already.
Great. No, thank you there. Sorry, go ahead, Anya.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm excited to see where insurance is concerned is looking at insurance on demand. I think there are some startups who are working on this out there, and I think we've got the data points now. So if you look at the biometrics, the digital identity around the human, their behavior, what level of risk that you're taking when that human comes into a car, and then you've got the data on the car itself. So combining those two together and looking at how you derive insurance on demand, I think is something I'm interested to see.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not too much involved into the insurance business itself. So, I mean, the payment part would be rather at the end of the journey anyways. But the way I would see it's actually rather like the car can be an additional sales channel. Like, I mean, the car can detect like, what is the conditions of the roads that you are driving daily for your commute? Like a lot of potholes maybe, or is it good conditions? And then like the car could make you recommendations. Hey, based on the roads that you are driving, have you thought about getting a tire protection? Or based on where you're trying to commute, or like based on weather conditions, did you know there's maybe a protection for like your windscreen and stuff like that? So that would be my vision, to also use it like as an additional sales channel, and an immediate one, like actually when you would need it from a customer point of view.
No, great. That's great insights. Thank you. And we've got another question here from Olivia Minnock to the panel. We've looked at insurance and touched on a few other use cases and products, but are there any other products and services that providers or car manufacturers have not yet considered embedding in car, but that you'd like to see happen in the future? Anything that springs to your mind here? I think, we can.
Good question. I mean, to be honest, there might be a long list when we look into customer feedback, like what they could imagine. And we talked about a lot of stuff already. Like I said, the no-brainers, parking, fueling, charging, already there in some cases. I mean, it's maybe you look into this one. What do you ask, like your smartphone? Like when you look into like navigation, like you drive to a place and then maybe is there an opportunity for reservations or can I book something? When I drive up there, like the most popular drive-thrus, like in the US, for instance, like being able to, I don't know, order something and actually it's already paid and I can pick it up already, like while I'm on the go from my work place to my home, for instance. So, but it's really a long list. So I think we have everything on the list. It's just like a question. Does it really make sense to have it in the car? And then the other question is just like, is it really also the stuff that our customers want to see? Because I can imagine that like based on different OEMs and business customers, they have different expectations what they actually want to do in their car.
No, that's a fair statement. I think from my perspective, I'm really excited. I'm a big consumer of rewards programs, and I think when you're using and spending in a car, I think being able to build up rewards with the manufacturer and being able to leverage that for things like services or upgrading the car for different features. You're also then being recommended different restaurants as you drive based on your patterns of spending within the car is something that I'm particularly excited about, being a little bit of a rewards nerd myself.
I would second that, Gary. I think when we start seeing the use of data to actually give very contextual offers to the driver, I think that's something where, regardless of the use case, I think that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm particularly excited about that.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm interested to see is connectivity between Internet of Things, because I think at the moment, in-car payments are still in a closed ecosystem. So, for example, if I'm listening to a podcast on Alexa and I'm ready to go to work, I step out, I hop into my car, I just want that to continue on, and the podcast be playing in the car for me. I don't know if this exists today, but I would love to see something like that.
Yeah. With Mercedes?
Yeah, I'm saying yes. I'm going to get Mercedes-Benz.
I'm not 100% sure about Alexa, but I use my Alexa to listen to music from a different provider. And actually, when I go like outside, go into my car, it just like continues.
Well, I think this next question, Jana, you're going to have some strong opinions on. So the next question we're going to put to the panel is, which car manufacturers do you see leading the way in in-car payments? Have you seen anything that really made you turn your head here? I know we looked at karaoke earlier on, but sort of a broader question here around what car manufacturer you see leading the way here. And I might let you go first here just to plant your stake in the ground early.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I'm biased. I would say it's Mercedes-Benz because, we're using state-of-the-art technology and we are collaborating with other industry partners as well, just to achieve this one and be able to offer our Mercedes-Benz drivers really just like a secure but yet seamless payment experience. And we are convinced that in-car payment is like the next logical step in payments as well, like coming from your cash to your credit card, to wallets, or paying just on the internet, phrase it that way, and then being able to pay in the car seamlessly as well. And actually, we are also happy when other OEMs stepping into this topic as well, offering features to their customers, because we believe the more car manufacturers will actually make use of the technology to offer services to their customers, the bigger the impact and the higher the customer adoption will be in the end.
Yeah, I would probably, I think what we're seeing in the market is sort of three types of players, really. There's the first category, which really wants to own the customer relationship. They really care about the brand, the relationship with the driver, and they're usually typically more high-end brands versus a mass market. And we're seeing them really push on and focus on in-car payments as a topic right now. Everyone in the industry is interested, but they're the ones actually investing and making an effort to actually drive difference here. Then there is, I think, the middle group, which I sort of could be more mass market, and they're fast followers. I think, like Anu mentioned, like the industry numbers are going to go up in the next 5-10 years predicted. At this stage, it's still fairly nascent. Consumer behavior is still not there 100%. It's still a time till the consumer behavior really kicks in. They start using car as a device to use. So they're the second category are more like fast followers. They are looking at the market. They're keeping an eye out, keeping abreast of trends, but still waiting and seeing. And then you see this third sort of segment. I think this is where you can bucket it: commercial vehicles, and there I think they're slightly even further behind in the journey. There are other priorities they have as of now, and you probably see them sort of coming through. And that's sort of what we're seeing, what I'm at least in our conversation seeing in the market.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with the way you kind of categorize that, Abdullah. And I like to think that the Apple car is going to be a fast follower. I've not given up hope as yet. And I think similarly, if you look at the new innovation and technology that's been built out by different players, there's a lot of maturity around some of the kind of the obvious essentials that we need in car. So I think it's hard to say who is in the forefront of it, but it's good to see that there's a lot of players who are in the forefront of it.
Great, thank you. And we've got another question here from another Marketan, which actually feeds nicely into the final question here. But we might take a moment and just answer. There's two outstanding questions here from some of the listeners or people who've joined the session. So this is looking at partners, and we've spoken. Sorry, I'm going back to this question here. We've spoken a little bit about the back-end tech, but how important are partners in enabling payments in cars? It would be great to get some insights here as well.
I mean, they are very important for several parts of the journey. I mean, not just, payment processing itself, you can't do it on your own. I mean, maybe you can get a banking license, but it's very complex, has a lot of more rules than maybe you will have when just like adding a payment functionality to your car. So for Mercedes-Benz, like we are provider agnostic. So especially they're going to look into the payment topics like payment schemes and networks. They are like instrumental for innovation and adoption of in-car payment technologies and solutions, because they provide framework, but also the support necessary to create a convenient and secure and seamless payment experience for the drivers or passengers, like depending on where and what you use in the car.
That's great. Sorry, go ahead, Anu.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the way I look at the different players that come into the ecosystem, so the car themselves, the brand themselves can decide to create the OEM, or they can partner up with someone to do so that plays into the ecosystem. You've got the numerous service providers, either through aggregators or directly will operate on that OEM. So that adds to the complexity of the partner ecosystem. And then again, to Jana's point, you've got a number of kind of payment providers that play into it as well. So again, getting a banking license is not an easy thing to do, and there's a lot of risk involved there as well. So you'd imagine that some of these players would work with financial service providers to do so.
Yep. And I think the partnerships extend beyond just financial players, right? Like, or the card schemes. It goes, how do you, let's talk about fueling. We talked about fueling in the car. How do you build a network of fuel stations? Like, there's this whole exercise that needs to be done by a partner. Similarly, parking spots. You'll have specialists in those spaces who have invested time and effort over a period of time, who's built that network. And how do you use that network to complement what you've built alongside the partnership side? I think that's sort of the end-to-end. So I think it's very partnership-heavy ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jana, you touched on something interesting there as well when you mentioned the schemes and the networks. What role do they play when looking to innovate in the in-car payment space? Are they a partner that you engage with regularly to support innovation here?
Absolutely, because I mean, depending where you are, the payment method is like very important, because this is like what the customer is also like expecting from you, supporting the one that's most favorable. And then thinking about the US, credit cards and digital wallets are like the payment methods that our drivers are expecting. So obviously we are talking to the industry partners, also like just doing some research, like what's happening out there, besides credit cards, maybe even like what new payment methods are evolving. And then like we get in touch with the partners. I mean, sometimes it's just as simple like of, oh, you are offering that what we want, you have an API, perfect, and you integrate it in the end. But when we think, for instance, about like delegated authentication, like using your car as a trusted device, this product was not there when we started talks with the payment networks. But we said like, we need a solution because the solution can't be just screening a QR code. It's not a nice experience. And then we actually work with them together, like based on the rules and the regulations that they are facing, and establishing a use case where we can say, when a phone can be a trusted device, why can't my car, which I own, be a trusted device as well? So it's important. They're important partners for us. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Sorry, I'm reading a question here that's just popped up again from Marketa. Okay, sorry, I read that incorrectly. So we've looked at the US and Europe when we talked about regulation. Be interesting to get some insights here from anyone on the call when we're looking at geographies outside the US and Europe. And there's also been another callback to karaoke here. But be interesting to get some insights from anybody here on the panel who's got any experience outside those two geographies we've already touched on.
I mean, just like for Mercedes, the customer experience will be most likely the same because your Mercedes Me ID is the place where you store your payment method, and this is always linked to your car. And if you change the car, your Mercedes Me ID will be linked to your new car. So this is what you use. There are some twists and tweaks depending on the markets, like how you collect data, how you save data. Do you have, like in Europe, some extra authentication steps in between? Do you don't have this one? What is the most popular payment method? So is it more like a merchant-initiated transaction, or is it more like a customer-initiated transaction, depending on the use case? But like the use cases that where I was talking about, for instance, the Mercedes Me store, where you can buy digital extras. This is already available in over 45 markets with Mercedes Pay. So the experience is similar for most of our customers, and it doesn't matter if you have a Mercedes in Europe, in the US, or in Asia. Other features are maybe a bit more local. So our drivers in Asia might not be able to experience them yet, but there might be some other features coming for them in the future.
Really interesting that there's over 40 digital extras you can get from the Mercedes store. What's the most unique or interesting digital extra you can get from the store?
Now the 40 refers like to the market, like globally, like where you can get them. There are not 40 different products usually in the Connect stores, but I think like most popular ones, for instance, can be dashcam features. Like if you take care of your car, dashcam is already in there. You just can able to feature there as well. Or I remembered when I moved to the US, like remote engine. It's not necessarily a singular feature that you buy, it's more part of a package, but it's like a very popular feature when you live like in Michigan in winter and it's getting very cold, to just like heat up your car a bit before. But can be totally different, to be honest. Like if you talk to a customer in Asia, they have different preferences and needs compared to a driver in the UK. So
No,
yeah, Rihanna, have you guys ever looked at subscription models for your features? Because I know it's been a hot topic in the market and there's been some hit and misses around that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
We actually offer them, not in every market yet, because, I mean, when we look to it from a nerd perspective, subscriptions are not as easily done in each market. There are some regulations there as well. But actually, we want to give the customer the choice. So most of the products that you can get in the Connect store, some you buy once in your life and they're just there. Others you buy like maybe for 12 months and then you can decide again. And you still get the possibility also to use a subscription and that you are able to cancel anytime. time. It depends like a bit. For instance, I can imagine like a leasing customer that maybe gets an additional feature and he knows I want to change my car within the next 6 months, will more likely go into like the subscription compared to maybe another driver who says like, oh, I like this feature, not thinking about the subscription, I just want to pay it now and have it for 12 months, I'm fine. Makes sense?
Great. And before we finish up, there's another question here from Alexander Ponti, which I've just skipped over. But it's a specific question here around authentication and authorization. So he's interested in how these steps are handled in an in-car payment use case where they're leveraging digital screens. I don't know if anybody can pick up on that one.
So maybe very simply summarized how it works for Mercedes. So what you do first is like that you register your car, like you authenticate your car first as the trusted device. You do this once, and then when you have done this, the next time when you actually like be in your car, for instance, scroll through the head unit to our Connect store, see a feature that you like and you want to buy or just test out, like maybe the engine isolator, then you can actually just click on pay and you see like, okay, maybe the last 4 digits of the card that you have stored, and then you use the fingerprint for authentication. This is very simply how it works. I mean, obviously in the backend, there are some protocol calls, there are API calls between the systems where like ID information is shared from the car and like registration that you did. And obviously your card information is tokenized, but this is how it's done from a customer perspective.
Yep. And I think one thing to maybe add there is typically the registration or the card registration for the first time is done on the mobile phone. And then once the details are attached to your ID, then you're able to take it into your infotainment system and bind the car to those details. So, and then obviously, as Jana explained.
Yeah, I don't think I can add any more to that.
Guys, we've come to the end of the line of questions we have here, but unless there's any other questions that have come in, I just want to take the chance to thank Jana, Anu, Abdullah for joining us today from this Marqeta API Chronicles session. It's been a real pleasure, a very insightful session for myself, and I'm sure for everybody else involved. And really appreciate you all taking part.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Thank you all.